welcome to Chapter 6, Part 3 of the Jatco CVT jf010e transmission. In this chapter, you'll learn the assembly process for the unit. My name is Jared Warren, and I'll be your host for this course. It's a great day to fix transmissions, so let's get started. Alright, so in Chapter 6, Part 2, we basically learned how to assemble all the sub-assemblies, the clutch packs, that kind of stuff. So if you're looking for that information, go back to Chapter 2. So basically we're going to start checking some clearances and going to start stacking this unit together and get it ready for final assembly. So the first thing we need to do is we need to adjust the preload on the differential. There is a shim in the main case, calling the main case here. This main case, the shim is underneath this bearing race to adjust the preload. And then here's the front case. So go ahead and put just the differential in and put the front case on, and go ahead and tighten a few pump case bolts up. And you should be able to reach in here in roughly 20 inch-pounds of turning torque. You do not want any end play, but you want a little bit of preload on the differential. Now if you need to adjust that again, the shim is going to go right here in the main case. So then we'll go ahead and take the case back off and pull the differential out. And next we need to do the transfer gear. So we'll go ahead and set the transfer gear in here and bolt everything together. The adjustments are made in the main case right here underneath this bearing race. So let's put the front case half on the main case with just a transfer shaft in there. You should be able to reach through here and have about roughly 20 inch-pounds of turning torque. The factory doesn't give us any of this information. This was on a few units that we have done over the course of a while, and just took a rough estimate of what the turning torque is on these gears. You do not want end play. You don't want them too loose, but of course you don't want them too heavy to bring the gears up themselves. We'll go ahead and pull the front case half back off. And now we're going to get to the rear pulley section. So in the last chapter, or chapter 6, part 2, we put the pulley set on the rear cover. So here what we're going to do. As you see in this picture of the belt, make sure your belt direction is the same as when you took it apart. You have a spring seat here. The little spring seat goes down, spring and a cap. Push the follower down. The follower is going to go down underneath this groove right here. You see in this picture to the right. The aluminum follower is going to ride along the side of this pulley, and then install your shaft. We have seen some multiple different shafts here. Some are solid, some are hollow with holes in it. The pulleys back here, go ahead and tighten your pulleys belts. You should have 20 millimeter heads on them. Also, you want to install a little O-ring, a little bit of RTV on the pulley heads here. So you have tighten your 6 pulley bolt retaining bolts down. We have an O-ring here in the main case, so go ahead and glue that in with some transmission assembly lube. You want to use some anaerobic gasket maker and go ahead and smear that on the case halves for sealant. Some people use RTV. I personally like the anaerobic sealer a little bit better, and that's what it comes with originally. Go ahead and put drop your pulleys down into your main case, or sometimes it's easier to take the main case and drop it onto the pulleys, whichever you prefer. I usually load the main case over onto the pulleys and leave the pulleys laying on the bench. Go ahead and torque all the rear cover bolts, 14 millimeter heads to 40 foot-pounds. Go ahead and install a new axle seal. And now we're going to flip the transmission over. As you see here, this is the pulley gear, and this is the spines of the pulley here. So we need to drop a bearing down. All these bearings are the same and measured the same on the unit that we had. There's one side you're going to have all these small little holes, and then the other side is going to be smooth. So I'm going to call this side the smooth side. Is going to face up, so all the little small holes in this bearing is going to go down against the pulley. Going to go ahead and drop your planet down into the transmission and spline in all the clutches. Make sure all the clutches are splined in. Then we're going to want to put another bearing on top of the planet. The smooth side of that bearing is going to face up. And then we're going to inspect the hub here. I want to make sure this hub doesn't have a bunch of grooves. As you see, this one here is not in the best shape. We put a clutch over there and it wasn't catching. It looked worse than it actually is. But you want to inspect for wear there. Also inspect the teeth and wear on the Planet Sun gear too. And then the splines on the inside that right actually on the pulley. So go ahead and drop the Planet hub in there. And then I glued the thrust bearing on the back of the forward drum here. Go ahead and glue that on with the smooth side facing you. And then you're going to want to spline in your clutch drum. And there's a Teflon seal on the shaft here, so kind of glue that, lube that up. Drop that in, make sure that gets all the way down into place. Alright, so now we have our stack up all together. We have one more thrust bearing here. This black side of the thrust bearing is facing up, and you put the smooth side down onto the drum itself. Go ahead and set up your H gauge here. I got an H gauge set up on the pump flange. And then the pin down against the bearing itself. I'm going to go ahead and flip the H gauge over and measure the clearance in between the pump and the H gauge pin. This one had 25 thousandths clearance. Don't see any adjustable shims in this unit either. Install a new front seal in the O-ring and the pump gasket. Of course, flow control valves and all that stuff like in the other section. Inspect your pump bushing. All that's already been done in torque down. So install the new gasket and torque the pump bolts down to 20 foot-pounds. After the pump's torqued down, go ahead and install the O-ring on the input shaft. Slide your differential in, then go ahead and slide your transfer gear in. Now we're working on the park mechanism. Go ahead and put the park pawl down in, your pin in. Oh yeah, forgot the spring. So the short end of the spring goes down against the case, and then you're going to put your park down over that, and the end of the spring is on the case side here. So this lever is being pushed downwards, as in this slide, pulling the park pawl out of the gear. Make sure you put your park pin in, and then if you have this funny looking roller left over on the bench or kept, it goes into the case right here, the corner of the case, and it keeps the park rod, or excuse me, the shifter rod from moving in and out or up and down in the transmission. So it's just a little pin, slides down in next to the rod to keep it in place. Go ahead and use some more anaerobic sealer on here. Lube up your bearings, and then go ahead and drop your case half onto the front here, or the main case. Go ahead and torque all the case bolts to 40 inch-pounds, or excuse me, 40 foot-pounds. Put a new O-ring on the primary pressure switch. Go ahead and screw that into the case and torque it down to 12 foot-pounds. Want to put some new O-rings on your electrical connector here and put that into the case and put the clip in from the outside. Under the valve body here, there's 2 case seals, so we want to put those both up in place and glue them into place. And also like to do a kind of an air check here. Reverse clutch here, you want to go ahead and air check that, of course. Forward clutch, you're definitely going to want to air check that. Primary pulley and secondary pulley, you can air check those. It's not going to be like your normal drum air check. It is a good idea. They should be fairly airtight. Some will move the pulley and some will not move the pulley. Depends if it's rotating or not. Not a huge fan of the primary and secondary air check, but it's a good idea to still do it and get used to what they do sound like. If you put oil in them, make sure you use the correct oil. Don't just dump ATF in there to do an air check. You'll want to dump in your Nissan CVT fluid oil in there for the air test. Yeah, we got the valve body ready. Here's the stepper motor in the ratio arm. This ratio arm, this little U seat here, needs to line up in the pin. So this pin and follower is what was in the rear cover, and this is what the ratio control arm rides on. So as you put your valve body in, make sure this lines up to the pin. So now we have a few different bolt lengths here. A is 30 millimeters long, B is 53 millimeters long, C is 69 millimeters long. Go ahead and slide your valve body in. Make sure your ratio arm is lined up here. Make sure your wiring's not pinched up underneath here. Torque your valve body down to 90 inch-pounds. 80 to 90 inch-pounds is just fine. And then plug in your electricals into the main case and your primary switch here. Go ahead and put the linkage sleeve down in, your linkage arm. This arm can go either way. There's not a right side or up or down. They're both exactly the same. Go ahead and torque your 19 millimeter nut down to 12 foot-pounds. While holding this 19 millimeter nut, torque your 14 millimeter lock nut down to 12 foot-pounds also. Go ahead and install a new pan gasket and torque the aluminum pans down to 90 and the steel pans we are doing down at 50 to 60 inch-pounds. This will conclude our Chapter 6, Part 3 on rebuild of the jf010e transmission. We want to thank you for your participating in our virtual training solutions powered by ATRA. Till next time, let's keep fixing transmissions together.